Welcome to Hermit Woods, where there's a story in every bottle.
We're live.
We're live.
We're live?
Cheers.
Am I alive?
Cheers.
Monday, live.
Here we are.
Here we are
Cheers,
again.
cheers, cheers. I like that the couch has become the standard. Not
I do.
that I get to sit on the couch, I suppose, but this
Does she- you
this
think she
setup
wants to
is.
sit on the couch?
I think
We
next
should trade
time
one.
Marika should be on the couch.
I get the
and you and I
whole
can-
couch, and you guys can stand.
But you have your whole cockpit over
I do.
here.
I have a
now.
nice
got
little cockpit, but I
two
like this
tops
setup
there
better than
set
at
up.
the bar. It's comfier.
It is. It's definitely
comfier.
comfier, yes.
Yeah.
I hope everybody else likes it as much, too. Welcome to Hermit Woods Live again.
I assume Matt's not on. because
Matt
it's-
is
Matt
still
is-
on.
he is
Greetings from
on.
Toulouse, from Matt and Lynn and Kathy, still in France.
Cheers to our
Wait,
European
it's
travelers.
Like, it's like midnight there.
They're
They're on
committed.
vacation.
Yeah, but, I mean, would you still be up? At
For this?
11:30?
To watch Hermit
Midnight?
Woods
Of course.
live?
Well, I mean, I know you would be
Of course
because
I
you
would
would be
be.
part of the show.
They have some Chambord open tonight.
Ooh.
That's the
some
raspberry.
Chambord, yeah.
Isn't that the raspberry liqueur? Yum. Yeah.
Usually in a
that.
globe-like
Yes, beautiful bottles.
bottle, the little neck to
And
it.
Christine has joined us. Karen has joined
Awesome.
us.
Excellent. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us for another episode of The Hermits Live at Facebook and YouTube. Thank you for joining us. If you're joining us for the very first time, we'd just like to leave a couple points for you. If you would subscribe to our YouTube page, right below Marika's feet, right
Down
down
here,
there is
right
a subscribe
under my
button.
foot
Please
there.
subscribe and you'll get notifications anytime we go live. Also, if you're on Facebook, there's a little bell. If you hit the bell, that'll subscribe you to our Facebook Live as well. Anytime we go live, you'll get a notification, and we might go live from just about anywhere, you can imagine, but we are always live on Monday at 5:30, so thank you for joining us. And if you're joining us today, please let us know you're here. The best way to do that is leave a comment in the comment section and say hello, and if you have any questions during the show, leave your questions in the comments as well. We will do our best to get back to your questions right away. Marika will be monitoring them and answering them herself or bringing them to the conversation. And if we miss your question somehow, we will do our best to get back to your question after the episode is over and answer them after the fact. So if you, either now or at any point in this broadcast, feel like you're learning something and you're enjoying what you get from us, please like the broadcast, share it with your friends, let other people know what we're doing here, and hopefully we'll get more people to join the conversation with us. So thank you.
I didn't say a word.
How did you do that? That was
I
amazing.
didn't say a word.
It was very strong self-control.
Well, you asked. So
Now Ken can talk. Ken can tell us.
now we're getting into some wine
Tell us,
business
Ken.
here.
Yeah, what are we
folks.
doing here
we've
today?
got.
We're getting
Look at all
serious.
these. There's no bottles of
getting serious.
wine. There's all these
No bottles,
carafes.
all these half carafes.
Why are they
I feel like the
carafes?
most
We
exciting
each have
Facebook
two,
Live sort of
identical glasses, and we're going to try 3 different wines that are from these carafes.
And why
we
are
have
they
the
in
first
carafes
two.
and not in bottles?
Because only one of them has been bottled yet,
Aha.
actually, but it hasn't been released to the world yet. So the one in your left glass, which came out of this carafe, is the 2021 vintage of Petit Blue Reserve.
And when do you think this will be released to the...
We only have, I think, around 10 or 20 cases left of the 20 PBR.
Oh, so soon.
So
Yeah,
this will
that
be
moves pretty
released
quickly,
soon.
yeah.
I like to age the wines in the barrels and then get them into bottle, and ideally they sit in the bottle for a while before they're released. So I try to time that.
That has something also to do with bottle shock, right?
Part of it's bottle shock from the process. I don't like to bottle something and then immediately put it on the shelves.
Yeah.
Although we have done that at times because people are waiting
They're in
for the
demand.
wines. But it's ideal if I have time to put them in a bottle and let them sit. They continue to age and evolve in the bottles actually faster than they would in a tank. And what's interesting too, we should maybe have taken out, we'll do that another show where we'll do sort of vertical tastings from year to year, and we can talk about the different vintages, because just like a wine made out of grapes, so much of what comes to the glass is based on what Mother Nature dealt out to the vineyard, to the fruit that was growing. So the temperature, the moisture, the winds, all the soil nutrition, all of those things come into play when the wine is created.
Well, quite frankly, even beyond that, right? I mean, it's natural yeast that you're using, and if it's not natural yeast, still yeast fermentation is a natural process.
Right.
You can never guarantee it's going to occur the exact same way from
Right,
year
the
to
microbes,
year.
yeah.
The temperature variations might differ. The pressing might vary a little bit from year to year. So there's a lot of variables that you can't have perfect control.
Yeah, you don't have complete control, and I don't, there's some huge producers and they want their bottle of Yellowtail Merlot to taste the exact same way as it did before. So they try really hard to get those wines to taste the same.
And some
to be
of
very
that,
consistent. But most wines, a lot of them are really trying to bring to the glass what the vineyard brought in that year. And so you get to taste the differences. And I don't think people worry too much. They want to make the best wine that they can. But they recognize that it's going to be a little different. I think it's like a live performance, to do the analogy with music.
sure.
The performers are up here, they're on stage, but the night feels a little different, or they feel a little different, and the music flows, and it's going to be different, and the wine's going to be different too. I mean, right off, I think Marika pointed right out when she picked up the 21, and we've been pouring the 20 downstairs, and she goes, oh, this is a little lighter. So just the color. And 2020, the harvest of wild blueberries was phenomenal. The only other time it reached similar high sugar, high richness levels was back in 2012. 2012 was a fantastic year for dark berries in New England. We were just getting going, and I remember it's like, wow, this stuff is fantastic.
And anybody who knows, anybody who has a garden, or anybody who has berry bushes or fruit bushes in their yard, or apple trees, knows this.
Yeah.
Some years
Yeah.
are better
Oh, yeah.
than others. It's a fact. There's nothing we can do about it.
And the berries, the blueberries were so fantastic. We bought extras, and we made extra batches of wine in 20. That's why we still have the 20 vintage, because I made more of it. We bought extra berries. And the 21, unfortunately, was not a spectacular year. And the wines are still good wines, they're pleasing wines, but they're not as rich or opulent as the 20.
Have you
The
made
berries
and
were-
bottled the 2021 Petite Blue? Yeah.
I have the 21 Petite Blue. Yes, that's all bottled as well.
Because that's more, I want to compare that to this, because this to me is tasting lighter, more like Petite Blue. So I'm curious if
Yeah.
the Petite Blue from this year is even lighter than this.
It is. The Petite Blue, and especially the regular Petite Blue that we have right now, it was from 2020, it was the second batch, and that got some barrel aging.
Yes.
So
So
it's a
right now
richer-
they're
it's a
both richer
version
and they're more
of Petite Blue.
similar, I think.
Yeah, they're closer
They're
together.
closer together than the, I think, vintage before, or the previous vintages that I've had. There's been more of a contrast between
Yeah,
Petite Blue
the
and
21
Reserve.
Petite Blue is getting back more towards the standard Petite Blue, which is light, fresh, blueberry, gamay-like, Beaujolais, more type of wine. But
But just to put a finer point on this, if you were to go into the grape world and explore the purchase of different vintages across the last 2-3 decades, because many of these vintages are laid down in cellars and aged,
Right.
and there are charts that the industry puts out, vintage charts,
Yeah.
that tell you, as a collector, if you're going to buy some old world European, say, Bordeaux's or
Yeah.
Burgundies.
2007 was fantastic.
They're going to tell you
06 was
what
crappy.
years to buy.
Right.
That doesn't mean they didn't sell wine in 06. And that doesn't mean that there weren't some 06 wines that were delicious and wonderful and,
Right.
and everybody enjoyed. But if you're going to look back, what were the best of the best years?
Yeah.
And there are charts developed by the industry to tell you that. And if Hermit Woods is around long enough, we will have those charts someday
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
We'll be able to go back to our older vintages and let you know which years we felt the fruit was the best.
Yeah, I mean, we're doing some of these events where we've been tasting our wines. I can remember distinctly the 2012,
Yep. Yeah.
the 2015 Red Scare stood out. We had a 2012 Petit Blue that was phenomenal. There were just some great years
Right.
that stand out, and 2020 is one of those years as well.
And creating those charts is not as important because we don't have these wines for sale in the volume that typically you can find wines on the European market. So it's not as relevant, but nonetheless, it's still meaningful. And the other comment I wanted to make is you mentioned yellowtail, and producing wine at a volume of yellowtail is not just about trying to control the process such that you get the same wine from year to year. It's chemistry. They measure the
Everything.
chemistry and they use additives and they change
And they
the
blend lots of different
they
grapes
blend
to
things
homogenize
together
it.
and add tannins if need be, or
Yeah.
add acidity or remove acidity. There's
Right.
a chemical balance being made because they're producing millions of gallons of wine, and they're having to accept grapes from huge fields of grapes, machine harvest. They just don't have the level of control
Right.
in the
And
hand
that's how
making
they can
process.
keep the price.
And that's how
down
they keep
so
the price down and make it available at the scale that they do. Yeah.
Yeah. So the reason we have two glasses, though, is that we have two versions of this exact same wine. So this version, the one that we just tried, is crafted the way I normally craft the Petit Blue Reserve. So the Petit Blue is all of these wild blueberries that macerate and ferment, and then that's mostly free run off into stainless steel tanks and ages in stainless steel, and it presents all that fresh, bright fruitiness. The Petit Blue Reserve spends more time on the skins fermenting, and then it goes into barrels, and these are classic French wine barrels, and it ages in those barrels for a number of months. This one I think was 8 months in the barrel, and then it eventually gets bottled. Well, prior to bottling this, I had this Petit Blue Reserve in these barrels, and I had an opportunity to interact with the head brewer, Dan Kiesel, at Stoneface Brewery. And Stoneface makes fantastic IPAs and a wide variety of beers. They're out near the seacoast.
And we sell
big
them here
producer.
in
And we have them here.
in the
Yeah, we
eatery.
sell them in the cans here. Very popular, very great, clean, rich, good tasting beers. Well, Dan over there also has a barrel program, and he does some barrel aged sours, some true sour beers that are barrel aged. And he also does some high gravity, higher alcohol beers, which are aged in whiskey barrels. So he gets barrels out of Tennessee or Kentucky. And he came to our place and sampled some of our wines and was very interested in what we were doing here. And he came over and he sampled some of the barrels that I had downstairs, wines out of specific barrels. And
You spent the afternoon together.
oh yeah, it was
sampling,
great.
yeah.
It was a great afternoon. He brought a bunch of beer and we sampled a bunch of barrels. And he wanted to take 2 of our elderberry barrels. So this is being used for our elderberry wine and for Hermitage, for blending. And he just loved the spicy, earthy character of those organic elderberries in those barrels. So he took 2 of those barrels, and he also loved the flavor and aroma of Red Scare that was in a couple of barrels. So what we did is we took the elderberry out into a tank and didn't rinse the barrels, took the Red Scare out of the barrels into a tank, didn't rinse those barrels, drove them over to Stoneface. So we did that in the morning, pushed the wines out of the barrel, drove them right over there, and he had beer waiting, and he immediately filled them up with beer. While I was there, I brought along a bottle of Red Scare and a bottle of Petit Blue Reserve. and he had some high gravity beers in these Tennessee whiskey barrels. One was a rye barrel, and one was a, I think it was a bourbon. That's not quite right. Anyway, there's 2 barrels, and one of them had an imperial stout, so it was a 10% stout, and one was a barley wine. And the barley wine was in a Tennessee rye barrel that was made out of sugar maple staves. Most barrels are made out of American oak, and these are made out of sugar maple. And it would always sort of bleed syrup, sap. There were little crystals of maple sugar on the outside of the barrel. Anyway, we sampled the beers, and the beers tasted fantastic. And we took a glass, had the beer, and then there was still a little bit of residual of the beer in the glass, and I poured some of our Petit Bleu into it, and I poured some of our Red Scare into it. And one of them went really well with the one that had the stout in it. That was the Petit Bleu Reserve. And one went really well with the barley wine. That was the Red Scare. And so we came back with 4 barrels as well, 2 from the stout and 2 from the barley wine.
Yeah, we got the better deal.
And
2
we
barrels
brought
to
them
them,
right
4
back
barrels to
here.
us.
Didn't rinse them over there. Cleaned the outside really well. Brought them over and immediately filled them up with Petit Bleu Reserve and with Red Scare.
Yeah, just to correct that, we sent 4 barrels down,
Oh, 4
We said 4
Oh.
and they
barrels.
sent 4 barrels up.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It wasn't
was
We
an
the
took
tree.
2
equal
elderberries and
exchange.
2 Red Scares.
Oh, okay.
We came back with 4 barrels.
Yeah.
Quick question. Matt asks, did he sulfur the barrels?
No. Good question, Matt. Typically for long-term storage, you want to have something in there that's antimicrobial, that you want to kill any sort of bacteria or things that might turn the residual wine into vinegar or what
But
have
it was
you.
just, it was that day that you emptied
But it was
and
that day.
refilled.
So
Yep.
it was just a few hours in between emptying the barrel and filling it right back up again. That's part of the problem. Dan likes to make sours in wine barrels, but he can't get wine barrels nearby. And
That's why you
that's
source locally, everybody.
so sourcing local is the way it went.
Matt Holmes, yeah, we did
So
those.
the one on the right is the same wine, but it was aged in this Tennessee whiskey barrel that had an imperial stout.
For how
Oh,
long?
boy.
It was only 2 months. It started to take on some very strong notes, which typically then taper off after time.
Wow.
Oh, I didn't. Oh boy, you get that
It's a different,
Vanilla.
It's a different
Vanilla,
vanilla.
some-
Yeah.
marshmallow,
There's a mocha.
burnt
there's a
marshmallow,
mocha.
like I'm getting a
S'mores.
s'mores characteristic.
She said this is the one that
Oh
had the
yeah,
stout.
s'mores. Wow, so different.
Ooh.
It has a much more complex character to me.
It does have a hint of smokiness. That's where the
There's a-
s'mores is
there's-
coming from.
Is that where you get that?
Yeah.
I get a sort of
Well, get the caramely.
I get like a coffee mocha.
Yes, I get that
like
too.
a dark chocolate.
Yes, as
type
soon
of
as you
thing.
said mocha,
Yeah.
I registered that in my taste.
It's a campfire wine then.
Yeah. Oh yeah. We need a campfire.
Should get some fire pits over at the garden.
It's interesting. You go back. That's why tasting side by side in the same glasses is always so helpful, because your perception is so referential that if you just had it on its own, it would be hard to know exactly
Sure,
what the
sure.
differences are.
The original is so.
But it's nice. I
fruit.
wanted to. I didn't want to strongly influence the wine too much. I didn't want it all to just be barrel, so that, oh yeah, great barrel. Sometimes, very often in sort of New World wines, California Cabernets, a lot of those, it just. My wife Maya had a wine called a cigar box that she bought at the supermarket, and it's like a cigar box. It's like, just all oak, there's no wine there. It's very strange. But a lot of people really enjoy that. They like that heavy, strong, oaky character. I like more of sort of the old world style to wines, where where the oak barrel treatment sort of supports and elevates the wine, but it doesn't overpower it. And so this is subtle, but it's right where I like it. I like that to come through. I think we're going to see some differences on all these, which is fun.
So I agree. I think what's going on, there's more complexity because there's more, I'm picking up more different flavors as I circulate the wine around my mouth. The aromas are different. It's just, but it is subtle, and it's just slightly more complex with a few interesting characteristics on the flavor that you don't get on the other one.
I get more of that vanilla on the end of it, retronasal. And not really stout, but the darker barley notes that you have from the stout beer, I get coming through also. So we're going to have an event. We're going to have a couple of events. One event's going to be at Stoneface Brewery because Dan there put his beer into our barrels, and they aged for quite a while, and then he took them out and bottled them up a month or two ago, primed them so they're being bottle conditioned, so the yeast are in there creating the carbonation. And they're going to release those, I believe, on June 10th. It's a Saturday. It will be at Stoneface Brewery, and we're going to have some of our wine there because this is getting bottled. Both of these Stoneface wines are being bottled on Thursday this week, and I want them to be in bottle and sitting in bottle.
And we have new labels.
And we have new labels
that are going to mention the collaboration and talk about the fact that this is a partnership.
Right, exactly. So they're going to do their release on June 10th at the brewery, and we'll be there to pour some wine, to try the beers, to hang out with everybody who shows up over there. And then we're thinking of 2 weeks later on June 24th, I believe.
It hasn't been set yet, but we're hoping for the 24th.
We're hoping for the 24th. Yep. We'll see. We'll keep everybody posted on that. But that would be an event here. And we'll, of course, have some of the Stoneface beers that Dan created there. And we will be releasing these wines to the public at that time. And it's going to be a little bit limited. There is going to be a total of about 45 cases of each of these. That's it. It's a one-time deal.
So
That's more than I was expecting, I feel like. But
Yeah.
it's still not very much, but
more than enough
Yeah.
should you attend the event to ensure you'll get some to take home if you like.
Yeah, there's
But
plenty.
it's
but to give
probably-
you an idea, I mean, we do 200 cases
Right.
of
So,
PBR.
so it's likely that these wines aren't going to be around for more than a few months.
Right.
Yeah.
They'll be in
And
the
if-
they'll be in the 2-bottle club for sure.
Yep. So before we go on to the next one, talk a little bit about the importance of collaboration in general. Why is this important? Why is this meaningful that we reached out and that Dan reached out to us and that we decided to trade barrels?
It's
and
really, you know, for so long, I've been working away downstairs. We were working away at my house and then in your basement, making our wines. And we'd go to different places and we'd taste different wines and talk about wines. But we were creating our stuff here. That's it. Sort of closed.
in a vacuum.
In a vacuum, so to speak.
insular.
And we would go to wine conferences, we'd go to other vineyards, we'd go and try these different things, but it's not really collaborating. We're the end viewer or receiver.
Sharing
of
ideas
information.
or sharing.
Share some ideas.
Yeah.
The whole idea of collaboration is really, really taking off in so many sectors, in the spirits world, in the beer world, in the wine world, in the cider world. People are really interacting with one another. And for me, as I'm sure it is for the other people, it's just great. It's so fertile. You talk about different things. Talking to a distiller, talking to a beer maker, and talking as a wine producer and comparing notes. We all deal with slightly different sorts of processes that we do to craft our stuff, but there's a lot of low overlaps. And so you learn from each other. Like, oh, you do that, huh? Oh, I've never thought about that. That's interesting. Maybe I'll try that next time. And they say the same thing. Oh, you do that? Oh, I should try that with my beer. So it's really fun. You come up with different ideas and concepts. And it really, I think, is accepted now, and the general public, especially the younger generation, are really excited about seeing these different collabs, seeing the fact that the breweries are interacting with one another and creating their beers together.
So on the customer side, there's a whole nother level. So there's all this excitement that you and Dan get to experience in learning and growing together. But then this is also an opportunity. You know, we're living in sort of the heyday of craft beverages.
Yes, we are.
And people have an opportunity to sample and try craft beverages in a way that they've never had before. Very wide variety of choices between the beer and the wine and distilleries or spirits. But by us collaborating, it allows our different audiences to become educated about something else going on in the world. You know, beer drinkers get very often, this is easy to happen, and I've been down this road myself, you get focused. You get, I'm gonna drink beer. I'm gonna go to breweries. I'm gonna try a certain or drink a certain style of beer. But when you start seeing the brewer collaborating with a winer, you're like, oh, wait a minute, beer, wine, the two together?
Right.
And you start thinking about, well, there's a big world out there. There's a lot of stuff. And if breweries are collaborating with wineries, there must be something coming out of that I've probably not tried yet. And it inspires you. It inspires you to try something new, to break out of your mold a little bit.
Yeah, and I think people now want new and different. They want something different. They don't want Merlot again. They want something, Merlot in a beer barrel? Merlot in a brandy barrel?
What's that like?
Well, that's got to be
It's an
pretty cool.
adventure.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, discovering something new for the first time, or taking that first trip down a trail you've never hiked before, or a road you've never driven down, or it's that that sense of discovery, being somewhere for the first time, trying something for the first time. We get to offer that as an opportunity in partnership with Stoneface or other organizations that we partner with.
Or combining two things that you love separately.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, knowing, oh, I love red wine, and oh, I love sour beer, and here's a beer that's aged in a red wine barrel. Well, it's two wonderful things. Why not put them together and see what that becomes?
Really fascinating too, as they open up and develop in the glass. The young wines change in the glass, and old wines do too. Chuck and I had a chance to have 2 left bank Bordeaux's the other night. This I bought through Garage East, and this guy, John Rimmerman, had been to this little chateau. It was right next to Chateau Margaux, but it's on an island in Bordeaux. And
It's hard to imagine an island in Bordeaux, but is that around where the rivers split?
Yeah. And so 2000, I guess, was supposed to be a tremendous year in Bordeaux, and 2001, not so much. But what he was able to get from the cellar at this chateau was their 2000 and their 2001 that's been stored in their cellar for the last 20 years. And then, you know, he was able to get a few cases and puts it out, as you know. And so I bought one of each, and we opened them up and tried them side by side. And it was a great event. They were both tremendous wines, and they changed drastically over a couple of hours. They really, I had pulled the corks early on, but I should have decanted them. Of course, as we were getting near the end of the bottles, they really started to come into their own, which is often the case, you know, with the wine. But it was fascinating, and I think collectively we thought that the 2000 was a richer wine, fuller, kind of like the 20 PBR as opposed to the 21. But the 01 Bordeaux was a great wine with all sorts of nuance. It was a little bit thinner, a little bit lighter, but it had a spicier sort of character to it, which was fun. Anyway,
Let's do
I
our
love
next
trying things like that. So, the next one, go into your right glass, which is the specialty one. This is the 21 Red Scare that was done in these Tennessee rye barrels that were made out of sugar maple. And Dan had put a brandy wine in it. And in your left glass is the 21 Red Scare that just got pushed out of its oak barrels. This is actually 100% barrel-aged Red Scare because I haven't blended it with the stainless steel.
Oh, okay. Yep.
So this isn't quite, this is probably a little.
So this is a good comparison between these because both of these were 100% barrel-aged products.
But what's going to go in the regular bottle of 21 Red Scare will probably be a little bit lighter.
I've got about 20% of Red Scare that was stored in stainless steel. That's going to get blended into it.
Do you know, so we know it's a maple barrel. Do we know where it was made?
I don't.
Was
Yeah.
this the maple barrel?
This was the maple barrel.
Okay.
So the other, so the one that we tried before, that was an oak barrel.
That was an oak barrel.
Okay,
Yes.
this is-
a standard whiskey barrel, oak barrel, American oak.
Well, I got to first tell you that this is your best Red Scare ever.
You like this?
Every year.
So this is made with 21 blueberries, but 21 blackberries were really good.
What's the percentage of blueberries in Red Scare? Roughly.
It's about 50-50 of blueberries and blackberries, and a very small amount of black raspberries. I've tweaked those ratios a bunch of different times back in my early experiments. Now I'm co-fermenting things like honey with the black raspberries or honey with the blackberries, and then blending up my Red Scare. But back in 14 and 15, I would play with the ratios of fruit. So in one I would do 60-40 of blackberries, and the other I'd do 60-40 of blueberries to see if I liked it one way or the other before I blended them. But every year I really like having equal proportions of blackberries and blueberries, and it's maybe 5% black raspberries, because the black raspberries are really strong.
This doesn't have anything to do with the tasting, but it's fascinating me looking into the blue lights as you swirl the wine. Do you notice that as you're looking?
Yes.
It's pretty funny. We have an array of blue lights, as you can see from the back wall here. I mean, do you agree? Do you feel the same way, or not?
Well, the hard part for me in comparing vintages is that they're
always changing.
They change after they're gone in bottle. So when the 20 Red Scare first came out, it was a little thin, a little okay, but not really rich yet. But now if it's been in bottle for a year, it's really nice. You pour it out in a glass and it just opens up and blossoms. It's great. So this to me still seems young because it's a 21. It needs some time in the bottle.
You know what I'm noticing different, though? And I could be wrong, but this seems less acidic. It's rounder. Just slightly, not a lot.
It is interesting. I'm not quite sure what's going on in my procedure, but the wines, I'm working with basically the same fruits each time. Each year is a little different,
Yeah.
of course, but what I've struggled with red wines is the high acid of the berries that grow around here.
Right.
And I've been getting the same berries. Maybe it's climate change, but the acid levels, the titration of the total acidity that's in these wines is going down. It's moving from what is typically of a white wine, 7, 8, 10 grams per liter of acid, coming down to what normal red wines, Cabernets and Merlots, 5, 6 grams per liter of total acid. And that's what's happening to these wines.
So it's correct. I am getting less acid.
It is. You're tasting that. They are becoming less sour, but I'm not quite sure why.
Yeah. Well, do you think, I always get the sense that barrel aging does change the acidity. Is that inaccurate?
I don't know. They stay the same.
Hmm.
They still say, we measure the total acidity.
Going in and going out,
and
it's the same.
or the portion that I keep in stainless steel.
Yeah.
But does maybe the flavors that come from the barrel kind of mask that acidity when you actually drink it? Even
Yeah, I don't know.
maybe that's what
Well,
it
I
is.
think so. I mean, it's like adding a little bit of sugar will change it. And so if the barrel brings a sweeter sort of perception, it maybe
Yeah, I don't know.
balances that.
All right, so now the new one. Oh boy, yeah, what a difference. It's so different. In a lovely way, at least on the nose so far.
Yeah, it's really, it's got a different.
Oh, it's so complex on the nose now. There's so many different. What is the word? You use the word esters. Is esters a term for?
So
what is
esters
the
are a
term?
group of compounds that are typically sort of fruity in general.
Okay, so they're not looking for esters then. It's not what
So like in beers and ales, you get more fruity esters.
it's the bouquet then that I'm talking about.
It's bouquet
these-
is what
yeah.
you're talking about. Because the bouquet is that combination of what the fruit brought and what the barrel brought.
Yeah.
Do you know if red grape wines are also dropping in acidity in the same way that the fruits that we were using are?
Sorry, say that again?
Do you know if our red wine grapes or red grape wines, are those also dropping in acidity?
We don't have any.
Well, I know we don't have them, but have you heard on the news?
I
don't know.
assume they are
Why would you
in
assume that?
places.
Well,
just
if
'cause the
our-
temperature getting warmer.
Yeah, if the fruits that we have are doing that, are grape wines as well.
You know,
Because that's part of, because acidity has to do with ripening. The
It has to do
riper
with-
they are,
it
the lower
has
the
to
acidity.
do- Well, ripening's a little different because you can still be ripe but have high acid. So ripening is a transformation that happens in the fruit, and it has to do with the flavors that form.
And the
at that
increase
time.
of sugar.
And the acidity of a unripe fruit as it ripens declines, and the sugars go up.
Right, that's what I'm talking about.
So, but the overall, what you're talking about is if you have, you can have a full ripeness and still have quite a bit of acidity. If you're in a cooler climate, that overall you never saw long, hot days.
No,
So-
but you actually, I think you just made the point that I was trying to understand, is that as the sugars go up and the ripening happens,
the acid's coming down.
the acids do come down.
Correct.
You can have a fully ripe fruit with high acids,
Yep.
especially here in the Northeast.
Right.
But they're going, you know, in the
Right,
warmer
those are the two.
climates, the ripening is going, you know, beyond what it was normally doing, which would suggest that the acidity would be dropping more than it would normally drop because of that excessive ripeness. They're getting bricks of 35, 38 bricks on some of these, you know, super warm areas in California. They're getting super
Getting
high bricks.
They're getting high sugar.
And that would, as if what your analogy was, would suggest that potentially the
My microphone just broke.
just broke.
Well, it looks like it came off
Oh,
its
just
holder.
the clip came
I'll
off.
deal
And
with
so
that
yeah,
later.
your sound is still good. It's
Nice.
just
It sounds still all right.
the
yeah.
box fell.
Okay. Good.
This is
So, yeah, I know that like I've heard that some of the big wine producers in California are looking to purchase land in Canada because
Preparing for the future.
The temperature is getting so darn hot that they're wanting to move to a cooler place
Sure.
or going higher up in the mountains.
But is it correct that as those really hot temperatures produce higher and higher and higher bricks, that the acidity on those grapes is going to drop?
It should be going down, right?
So it could be the same exact thing
Yeah.
that we're talking about.
Yeah.
And you might be experiencing, we've had warmer and warmer
It's
summers.
warmer and warmer
The
summers here,
fruit
right,
is getting
so-
riper and riper. You were getting blueberries with bricks close to 18.
Yeah, we had
Which is
17 and a half or
insane.
something in 2020.
Yeah.
That's crazy. And 21, it was 11.
So the acidity level between an 11 bricks and an 18 bricks would be different? Yes? No? Maybe?
That, I don't think they're tied together that way. It seems like they should be, but I know that the acids are complex because there are different sorts of acids. Tartaric acids and malic acids and different things that are in there. But I think in general, if the temperature is warmer, the sugar levels get higher and the acid levels get lower. I think that's a good generalization, a safe generalization.
So to answer, I think Matt's question, right? We would generally
I would think that's the
think
case
that
too.
that's probably the case in the grape.
I know that in a lot of places that grow Cabernet and other grapes, they add acid to their wines because there's just not enough acid there anymore.
Interesting.
And the wines
So
end up
that
being-
is suggestive of
Yeah.
the same thing happening in the grape world.
Is this so? Gary was here on Saturday and was lucky enough to get to taste a little bit
Gary
of Red
got to
Scare.
try
Was
this.
it this? Yeah. And he said he thought that the new vintage had a smoother caramel flavor.
Yeah,
But that's
so-
partly because it's the fully barrel aged that they were tasting.
So both of these were aged the same amount, French oak barrel 100% on the glass on the left, and the one on the right started off in French oak and then went into the maple.
American oak, or
No,
American maple.
maple, American maple.
Now it's interesting because I was
Sugar
getting
maple.
I was getting what I thought to be vanilla, but I don't imagine American maple gives a vanilla character, although maybe it does.
I think some, maybe.
I think
yeah.
it would too.
I get a bit.
think that as you toast the wood, you develop sugars. They're called galactannins or something like that. Various compounds that, just like when you toast a piece of bread, you change that flour that the bread is made out of into a new flavor profile because of you're cooking it, and so you're changing molecules, changing starches into sugars and various other things. So I get almost I definitely get some vanilla.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, for sure. I also got just a hint of that. It's not as prevalent, that burnt character, the s'mores, but again, the barrels we're talking about are charred, not toasted. So
These
you,
are charred
you
barrels.
do
You're right.
get a burnt character from the
You're
char.
right. These are charred barrels, and
If you don't know the difference, in winemaking, they just toast. They just lightly toast the color of the wood. It changes to a brownish, a darker brown color. Whereas the whiskey industry literally chars,
Yeah.
like burns to a crisp, like almost charcoal, because it has a filtering effect. So, I mean, there's no charcoal literally going into the wine. By the time these barrels are on its third or fourth use.
yeah, let's see. They had one whiskey in them, then they had a
these-
beer in them, and now they have a wine in them.
Yeah.
And
You should do one at like 3 Honey Gold, do a mead in it next.
I think you might be. Didn't
No,
you
not
put it?
right now.
What did you? Didn't you follow one of them up with a mead? What you took when you took these two wines out of those barrels? You used the barrels one more round for something else.
oh, did I do that?
I think you did.
I think I did do that.
You did tell
I think
me.
I did
Thought
put
it
a
was
3
a-
honey in.
That's what I
That
thought.
seems the natural next thing because 3 Honey usually goes into a red wine barrel, but now it's a red wine
I think I did do that. I'll have
beer,
to go back to my notes. and
bourbon
see.
barrel.
You've been
Would you
busy.
ever?
There's a lot going on.
I know.
And then, so sometimes
There's
I
100
I
containers.
don't keep track of it.
Uh,
Sometimes.
2 audience questions. Matt asks, would you ever consider a virgin maple cask?
Say that again?
Would you ever consider a virgin maple cask?
I don't know
so
that
a
we could get one.
new maple?
I don't think we could. It'd be really hard to get one. There are so few people
doesn't-
doing casks out
Yeah.
of something other than oak. I mean, I don't know if he'd consider it or not, but I don't know if we could find it if you
Fit it,
wanted
yeah.
it.
There are some important things that happen with untoasted oak. Clark Smith has written about this quite a bit, and it complexes with molecules that are in grape-based wine. I don't know what would happen with these wines. So it's certainly a possibility to consider, for sure.
But
But
she's
I
saying
don't know-
about a maple barrel. You said
I don't
untoasted
know.
oak.
I don't know oak or maple where you would ever get anything like that.
That's
either.
what I mean. It's be hard to
I don't
find.
know that-
Yeah.
And I also find you talked about the maple seeping, the sugar on that, and I
Yeah.
remember tasting
That was
some
really
of the
cool. Yeah,
sap.
getting those crystals.
But sap is not sweet, but this is like sugar. It's sweet.
Well, it was the
The crystals were
you know
very
just
sweet,
like
yeah.
when we used to boil and make syrup. So we're driving off the water. So what's
Oh,
happening
so
is
the
little
evaporation of the
droplets
water.
are coming out. It's evaporating. Little droplet comes out. It's evaporating, and what's left is the sugar.
Is the sugar. Okay.
Yeah.
It's like
That's
maple
what's
candy,
happened.
yeah.
That's why.
Yeah.
That's why you end up with those little bits of sugar in that, for sure.
The other question was from Priscilla, not really related, but still always worth answering. She wants to know if you've ever tried using ground cherries or husk cherries. You ever seen those or tried those?
I got a chance to work with some choke cherries that were growing along a stone wall at Greg Mee's house down in Canterbury. Those went into the 2012 melange.
Ooh.
And I've always
Which was
Oh, those
your
are
best
different.
melange.
oh yeah.
2012 was such a great
and
year.
12 was
Oh, yeah.
fantastic.
Oh, I've seen those. I used to have
been
one of
looking
those trees.
for sour cherries to make wine out of, but I haven't found them around here
These
yet.
husk cherries, they're
Anybody
golden.
know sour cherries around here?
These
Not
are
the
different.
sweet
yeah.
cherries for eating, not a Rainier
Cherries
cherry or
don't grow
something.
well here. We tried
Certain
growing
types
cherry
do.
trees at my house in Center Harbor for years.
I
and
have a cherry tree at my house, and there's a cuculio insect that gets to the buds before the cherries ever. I get like maybe 2 cherries a year.
That's what we used
We
to
had-
get. A couple cherries.
Flowers beautifully.
Yep.
But it's this pest, and there you can spray for it. And,
We
and
had
you
a
get cherries.
tree, in my yard growing up, we had a tart cherry tree that was fantastic. It did a lot of fruit every year, and we made cherry pie every year.
We
And
had
we had issues with birds. We sometimes would put a net over
Yeah.
it for the birds, but no other pests.
I had a cherry tree in my yard in Rhode Island, and we would get cherries. Unbelievable
so
amount of
many.
cherries every year, and I would make a cherry pie every year that was so delicious. I so miss those cherries.
That's what, yeah, growing up, when I was really young, I always
Okay, sweet
liked
cherries
angel
too.
food
We
cake
get
for my
some
birthday.
sweet cherries. Bob's gonna make.
I'm going to make a pie.
Because he makes great blueberry pies, so I imagine you make a great cherry pie too.
That was my birthday dessert always. I had angel food cake when I was really little, but by the time I was, I don't know, a preteen, I didn't want cake. I wanted cherry pie for my birthday every year. 'Cause I love
It's
it so
pretty
much.
good stuff.
But it has to be those good tart cherries, not that cherry.
Otherwise, it's too sweet.
Well, the cherry pie filling you can get most places.
Oh, no.
It's just,
No.
I'll eat it, but it's
Yeah, it's too
nowhere.
sweet,
No,
yeah.
no. Good.
We're
tart.
going
Yeah,
to run
we
out
gotta-
of time.
Yeah, we got to get to our last
have a whole other
wine.
conversation to have here, so we should.
Well, this is gonna be
Because
kind
this
of a
next
fun.
one, this is sort of a different. We're veering off
So-
into a whole different world.
So let's
of
just say,
spirits now.
to put a conclusion to this, so excited, Stoneface and Hermit Woods collaborated to create some really interesting new wines, and I can't wait to taste some really interesting new beers that they're going to put out. And in the month of June, you're going to get a chance, if you like, to try both the beers and the wines from these two collaborations. So now we're going to move on. So we're excited about collaborating. We've been talking about doing it for a long time, and we got a call out of the blue
Yeah.
from another organization creating craft spirits in this part of the world, Tamworth Distillery.
Yeah.
And they asked us if we had any use for a couple barrels that were aging brandy,
Apple brandy.
apple brandy.
Right.
And of course,
Easy question.
that was easy. Question and answer. We immediately jumped on it and said, yes, when can we get them? And so take it from there.
Yeah. So, Jamie Oakes is the head distiller over there at Tamworth Distillery, just a half hour up the road here. Make all sorts of fantastic spirits.
I already rinsed.
I think she's already done that.
I'm prepared.
She's
I'm
ahead
ready.
of you. So that's the barrel one.
On the right.
That goes in your right glass. And he makes, I think he's got 200 barrels or so. We went out to
Yeah,
his
yeah.
barrel building.
You got
the
a
other
grand
day, and it
tour.
They
just
have a whole
smells
barn, yeah.
Fantastic. 200 barrels in this big old barn.
If you haven't been to Tamworth Distillery, put it on your list. It's totally.
Highly recommended. So he's got these, he makes an apple brandy. And he gets a cider, ferments that cider. All spirits start off in some form or another of fermentation to develop the first initial alcohol. But as you know, yeast produces 6, 8, 10, 12% alcohol. To make a spirit then, you distill it. You warm it up, the ethanol vaporizes first, you condense that ethanol in a variety of different ways, and you end up with your spirit, and then you can age it in different barrels. So he's making an apple brandy, and I thought, well, it would be really nice to try our heirloom crabapple wine in a brandy barrel that had an apple brandy in it. So He sent over those 2 barrels. They smelled fantastic. I have our batch of 22 heirloom crabapple wine made from the Dolgo crab apples from around the area here. And
this didn't
that's in
Didn't you
stainless steel
just
tanks.
Oh, okay, I thought you just bottled crabapple.
I did bottle a portion of it.
Okay.
Yeah, last week, you're right. But
not
I have 2
quite
more
all.
big parts to bottle. So I took those barrels and filled them up, and that was just, I think, a month and a half ago. So it hasn't been in the barrels long. So the one on the right, that I think you can smell the brandy effects
Oh,
on,
wow.
has been in there just a month and a half. And the other day, Jamie came over from Tamworth to sample this wine, and then I gave him a taste of the Red Scare in the sugar maple barrels. And he's like, oh, wow, that's really interesting. And I said, well, actually, I'm going to take that out to bottle. Do you want these sugar maple barrels? And he said, yes.
Oh, this is so cool.
So we've acted as a catalyst to connect Stoneface to Tamworth via Hermit Woods. So these sugar maple stave barrels started off in Tennessee, went to Stoneface for a beer, came to Hermit Woods for Red Scare. That Red Scare now barrels went over to Tamworth.
Almost on the back of a motorcycle.
Almost.
Almost.
Yeah, that was
Thankfully,
fun to try.
just almost.
That
These
was
guys.
fun to try. I did ride around town here, but
We got a picture of it
almost-
on the
almost.
website if you want to see Ken with a motorcycle with
wiped
a
out.
barrel.
I'm riding like this with the barrel
Oh,
pressed into
gosh.
my back. It was a little sketchy for sure.
It's so
Glad
fun.
we
It's,
didn't- glad
I
we didn't
almost
go over
wish
there on the-
it's like your special barrel, that little barrel that you have downstairs that you've had since the really early
Yes.
days. That you have
Yeah, that's not going anywhere.
you have the tape on it for all the different things.
Right.
It's almost like you wish you could have sort of maybe carved into the barrel or inscribed like the person that made that maple barrel. I wish they had
Yeah, that
put
would
their
be
initials
kinda
on it,
neat
and
if you
then
could
and then
see
the
history.
distillery that used it, if they had
Put
put
a
their
Stoneface
put a stamp on it, and then a
put a Hermit
Stoneface
Woods
stamp,
on it,
and then a
put
Hermit
Tamworth
Woods.
on it.
Yes, exactly. To sort of see that.
Cool.
Well, this is just the
genealogy
beginning
of
of
the
these.
barrel.
This is just the beginning. So we do this round again. We should do that. So if we like the way, along with Tamworth,
Oh, this is all great.
if we
right?
like the way all of this goes, next year we should plan a more planful. We have our iron. We'll burn the snail in. I'm sure Tamworth would burn a. So then we'll have barrels, and then we'll make those barrels available to our guests after they're all done.
That would be cool.
Those will
So-
be special barrels.
Or we could
Make some
put those
furniture.
around.
Yeah.
So
So
what
yeah,
he's
we got
doing is he has an apple brandy that's been in barrel for 4 years. And like some scotches are done, some rums are done, you do a second barrel, you do like a sherry finished scotch. So the scotch sits in its wine barrel for a long time or whatever it is, and then in the very end you put it in a sherry barrel for a little while. So he put his apple brandy into the Red Scare barrel to
fun.
finish it off. So it's a double barrel approach.
That's what I'm
That's
seeing.
what he decided to do, and the Tuesday when he was here to the Thursday when we delivered it.
And again, the collaboration side of this is so much fun because not only did we learn so much talking when he visited us and sharing some of our products with him, we learned a lot about what they're doing, what they're thinking about, and what their creative process is. And then we get to go spend an afternoon there digging in on what they're doing over in Tamworth, and so much fun stuff, so much learning, ideas, light bulbs going off all over the place. And it's just such a joy to be part of that the sort of at the core of it.
This is so interesting.
Most
So-
of the time, all the time, when we have our heirloom crabapple wine, there's a little bit of sugar that's added to the wine before it gets bottled to balance that bright mouth-watering acidity that's there.
Okay, I can.
This vintage, 22, the apples were harvested, and I think the weather's getting warmer, and the acid levels on the crabapple have come down. So there's not as much sugar going into it when it gets bottled.
It's to the
for
point where
balance.
I'm almost like,
You can almost drink it straight up.
you
dry.
don't need any
And
sugar.
then Ben is
No,
like,
I think
"Don't
it
put
wants
any
a
sugar
little
in
bit.
that, It's great.
Yeah.
I
it's-
think it wants a little.
Well, yeah. You like things a little sweeter, though.
A little, no, yeah.
A little.
But not as much with the crabapple, but I can taste that little back
There's a
sweetening
bite.
is missing.
There's
Yeah.
a bite on the back end. It
But you know
reminds
what?
me of a Georgian wine.
But you know what you get? This is always interesting balance, and you talk about this a lot. when you add the sugar, there's an apple character that I get.
That you don't get when
It's
the
so
finished wine.
rich and so appley that will drop back when you add sugar. You lose some of that because that acidity. I think that the acidity carries that apple forth. It carries that rich apple aroma. So it's a balance. The more you add sweetness, and we're talking about a small amount of sweetness. We're doing 1 or 2% residual sugar, but
This
nonetheless.
one's got a little, it's a little bit too much ethanol to the wine.
But it's interesting, the barrel aged,
Now the
it's
barrel
almost,
aged
the
wine-
barrel kind of adds some sweetness in a way.
Right.
It
And this,
certainly did.
I don't quite know what to make of it. It's so
You know what I
different.
get? Cotton candy.
Yeah.
There's cotton candy.
I get cotton
Yep.
candy. I
So-
feel like I just went to the sandwich fair.
This has only been in barrels for about a month, you said. How much longer do you think you're going to leave it in there?
I don't know. So when I went over, when Bob and I brought over the Red Scare barrels, he gave us another apple brandy barrel. So I have a third one because we were liking so much the way this is going. It's like, well, let's carve off another barrel's worth of crab apple into here. But I
very
think,
interesting.
I want it to go overboard a little bit too much out of the barrel. So when you try it, you smell it, it's like, okay, that's all
Well-
brandy. We better take it out. Because then that subdues afterwards. It's getting close though.
It's very, there's again sort of I guess, cotton candy, you get a bit of that sort of marshmallowy.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot more on the nose than the flavor, I think, but the flavor is there too.
Oh, I love it. This is so cool. This is one of the
That's really-
coolest wines.
That's really, I like this a lot.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
really, really nice flavor.
It's very long flavors, retronasal.
Yeah, it's
You
much
know,
more
after you-
complex
after
than
you
the
sip-
crab apple usually is.
After you sip
yeah.
the barrel one, you can sit there and keep breathing it, keep tasting it.
And that's
keep
probably
smelling
that ethanol kind of sort of
it.
hovering
Part of
in
that
there,
ethanol that's there, but
carrying those
part of it's
flavors.
just that charred brandy flavor that's soaked into the wood. You know, these come over wet. So when the barrels are transferred, you call it a wet barrel. So he just takes the stuff out and puts a bung in it, and there's still half a cup of brandy or stuff. Just a little bit sloshing
Half a cup
around.
to, 55 gallons. So
Right.
it's a
Right. It's
minuscule
not-
amount.
It's a very
but-
small amount. But then there's a
But
bunch
it's
of it
soaked into the wood. Yeah.
Right. So it's a lot of it's soaked into the wood. So over time, that comes back out into it. This is another one where,
interesting.
something like 3 Honey is such a nice base that it could do really well. I look forward to a collab where I get to put some 3 Honey.
Well, you might have one already downstairs that you forgot about.
Oh yeah, that's right.
This is a little bit off topic too, but I was curious, as we've been talking about barrels,
You have a minute to go off topic.
I've always wondered what would happen and I'm talking about dealing with neutral barrels, not oak flavored barrels, but neutral barrels that have given off all of the oak flavor that they're going to give. What would happen if you let Red Scare or Petit Blue Reserve, I'm thinking more Red Scare or maybe some of the Hermitage, but let the wine live in a barrel for like 3 years? It's like one barrel. Like take a barrel of Red Scare and just let it ride.
So the longest I did was 4.5 years downstairs
What
for
was
a
that?
3 Honey Gold.
Oh, wow.
4.5 years.
And how did you feel about that?
It was great. But
But you don't have the
it was
barrel. You
really,
don't have
really
enough
good
barrels.
after 1 year. So, and all the barrels are
No, but
precious in space
Someday,
and time.
someday
so
though. I hope someday we get to explore that for one of our wines, just to see
Yeah.
what happens, because there is a wonderful change that takes
It
place
can
when
be,
you put
it can
wine
be
in a
too
barrel.
much though, too. I mean, you can reach into it. There was more volatile acidity that developed in that 3 Honey Gold, because over time with air exposure and the rest of it, eventually you get acetobacter and you start to get
It's risky.
acetic acid coming
Yeah.
through and vinegar sorts of notes.
Yeah, yeah.
And that can dry it out and reduce the quality of the overall wine.
Yeah.
So it's a careful balance.
Yeah.
Really, my understanding of the transformations of wine that take place, it's when it's very young, right after fermentation, the first 3 or 4 months are the most critical time to have it in barrels. And then after that, you get less and less change and influence.
That's a great answer, because somebody asked me today, we talk about how the wines age in barrel, and then they get oftentimes transferred to stainless and age additionally in stainless. And I know there's some reasons, I know some of the reasons why it's important to start in barrel, but I didn't know that,
Yeah, so
that's one of them.
and I didn't realize that until like 2012 or something, because I was learning about winemaking and reading about winemaking. A lot of it was Clark Smith's book and understanding microoxidation and what that does to the molecules in a wine. And it's the very beginnings that are really critical to a wine, to get it in a barrel right away. And it's so true. It's helped my wines get better by doing that, getting them into barrel right away after fermentation. And then later on, once they've done their time in barrel, it doesn't really matter. They can sit in stainless steel or they can go in bottle. And when I have the warehouse space, I like to put them in the bottle because they're going to age in the bottle faster than they are in a tank. So I try to get them in a bottle once they're done.
Yeah,
Then I can let them age.
yeah.
You know, going over to Italy and walking through some of the places there, they make their wines, they bottle their wines, and then they store their wines for a year or two in bottles before they release them. And it's for them to age, because they age faster in the bottle.
Yeah,
And I was like, wow, that makes sense.
yeah.
So I have, in the warehouse, I have 19 Hermitage and 20 Hermitage in bottle.
We need to do a show on that.
Oh, that would be fun.
Yeah,
And I have the 21 and 22 downstairs in barrels.
yeah, that'd be fun.
So we
Well,
can go back.
We
are
have
over
come to
time.
the end
Yes, we have.
of another
People
hour.
are all, everyone's
Wow.
cheersing and saying goodbye.
Thank you, everybody,
They
once
know when
again.
it's,
Too bad you
they
guys
know when
are all
it's
so
6:30.
far
They
away,
start
you know,
piecing out at
there's
6:30,
wine
even
left
if we're
over.
going over sometimes. But
Well,
hoping everyone has a good week. We look forward to next week. We are going to be tasting our 6 spring club release wines. I think by then, hopefully, a lot of our
yes.
club members will have been able to receive
That's
their
on
bag.
May 1st, right?
May 1st.
May
yep,
1st. So next
week.
next
That's
week,
my
we're,
daughter's
we're
birthday.
shipping out most of we're shipping out wines tomorrow. So even our shipping club members should have their wines by next Monday.
Yep.
And those pickup members, a lot of people picked up already over the weekend. We had a lot of people in.
Yeah, it was a
grabbing
great
their wines,
weekend.
so-
it's
So fun to see everybody.
It's important for them to have the wines, but probably less so. I know most of the people out there are not going to open up all 6 wines.
I recommend not.
No, probably not.
It's
Pick your
really,
favorite.
it's really
Pick one.
for an opportunity for people to hear our thoughts when we sample those
Right,
wines.
right.
And, you know, that way, whether they have their wines yet or not, I think is not that
Exactly. Yeah.
critical.
And
But-
we always post the video afterwards, so you can always go back and reference that video when you open one of those bottles.
That's a key thing, I think, Marika, that when they do get around to opening up the Lake House Red, they can go back and watch that portion of it, that snippet.
So with that, thank you for spending another Monday night with us. We really appreciate it, and we look forward to seeing you next Monday at 5:30. Cheers, everybody.
Cheers. Thank
Right
you
on.
all.
Cheers. Yeah, that'll be fun to do all